Well, thank you for whoever of you told me to record, because it wasn't recording, and now it is. So we are going to have the webinar recorded. Right. I think we can. I think we can get started. I'll share a presentation, and let me just jump to that. And this is it. And I will try and make this slideshow. So hopefully everyone can see. Mark, can you see okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, so today we're going to talk about the Golden Visa combined with the new tax benefit scheme in Portugal called IFICI by the government, TISRI in English, or NHR 2.0 as everyone else calls it. We'll start with the Fresh Portugal side and then move over to Mark. And so yeah, so NHR is over, and long live IFICI, as the Chinese always say. From that, what are we going to talk to you about today? So quick introduction to who we are. Just a little bit about the Golden Visa scheme. Most of you probably know it quite well, but we'll just go through the basics. An introduction to IFICI, which is our expertise, and we'll follow up with some details, the benefits, the process, then how we're going to work on IFICI and how can we hopefully work together. So who is Fresh Portugal? Who are Fresh Portugal? So we're the largest expats or digital nomads focused law firm in Portugal. Expat work is all we do. There's 14 of us, plus support staff with multiple qualifications, and we advise a huge number of expats coming to Portugal every year. And our mission or vision or what we want to achieve is to basically make people's move to Portugal from wherever they're coming a success. We hope to see people staying, integrating, and enjoying Portugal as much as we do. Quickly about the Golden Visa in Portugal. So it's a scheme that was established in 2012 to attract foreign investment. Very successful one. The Portuguese one is one of the most successful ones in the world. It offers the residency permits, eventually a pathway to citizenship. You can apply for citizenship after 5 years. And most people will have it in about 7. The unique thing about the Portuguese program is the minimal physical presence requirement. So people don't actually have to come to Portugal for that long, but the clock still counts towards the citizenship. And if people want to be visiting the Schengen area, then it grants visa-free travel within the Schengen area. And on top of all of these, the tax benefits that we'll talk about in a bit. Some changes have happened in 2024 following European pressure, some domestic pressure. The government ended the main Golden Visa route, which is the real estate one. There's been a huge industry of Golden Visa investment in real estate, and that was gone but people still want the Golden Visa. So there's been some rumors that it's been completely discontinued, which is not true. It wasn't discontinued. But the main route is now the funds. So the government now says, well, you need to make some contribution to the country beyond just buying a house. And funds is where most people go because it's perceived to be safe, and your money is seen as best protected. And the fund route is now 500,000 euro investment, but it's an investment. It's not a donation or a fee. There's a small fee, but otherwise people have a reasonable expectation to get that money back with a positive return at the end of the investment period, but it does need to stay closed for the time of the investment if people want to receive a passport at the end of this process. The downside, or one downside, is that the process itself hasn't been working very well, in that since the pandemic, the Immigration Office IMA has developed a big backlog, and Golden Visa applicants that feel rightfully that they've been paying a lot of money to get a passport and a route to citizenship. The applications have actually been processed very slowly and still are. Some people have been waiting 2 years, some people have been waiting 3 years. But one of the things that have happened recently is that the government's finally shaking this program, has asked everyone to resubmit electronic documents, made it a little bit easier, and hopefully will lead to they promised to process applications quickly now, and we really hope that this will happen. Obviously, I don't know how many of you have heard that the Portuguese government has just fallen, and hopefully that won't have much impact, and still things will get better, but we just have to wait and see.
However, just to add on that, one positive thing is, although yes, there is a backlog, that's true. So people getting the residency card is taking longer than expected. Also, positive changes have been made in the beginning of the year, and we're starting to see the process getting faster. But one big benefit of the program is that as soon as you make the investment and you apply for the golden visa, in 5 years' time, independently of what happens throughout those 5 years' time, in 5 years, you can apply for the Portuguese passport. Okay, so though some delays in the middle, the end goal is typically investors have been fine.
So yeah, so even if you it's a really good point, Mark. Thank you for bringing it up. So the clock is counting. Even if there's a delay, the clock is still counting towards citizenship. Still annoying, but there's also a bright side that you don't need to pay as many fees. So no, there's a silver lining in everything. Yeah, and I think this sort of leads us to this slide, because there really are two main types of golden visa investors, and we've sort of identified the group in between them. The one type is the people that just want the passport and the free travel and have no intention of ever coming to Portugal, and that's a considerable chunk of golden visa investors, and that's legitimate. It's fine. It's part of what the program allows. But then there's the other part of people that do intend to move to Portugal at some point, normally in 2 or 3 years, because if it was straight away, they would seek other types of visas that are cheaper and easier to get. But people that want to move in the future and do see Portugal as a potential destination to go to. And in between these two groups, there's a growing group now of people that don't have any immediate plan to move to Portugal. We call them the Plan B people, but are very worried about whatever it is that happens in their country. It could be a destructive UK budget that raised prices significantly, or most recently the word that's I just came back from the US, and there's only one thing that people are talking about, and you can guess what that is. But a lot of people are very worried about growing division and how the politics are growing. So they want to have that option to move at some point in the future. And this webinar talking about tax benefits domestically is more to these last two groups of people that may want to come to Portugal in 1, 2, 3, 5 years time, and they wouldn't want to be hit by prohibitive taxes, and they would want to benefit from some system that helps them mitigate the effects of these taxes. So moving from here, Pedro, tell us what IFICI is.
So thank you, Zef.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we're getting a couple of questions saying that we're just showing slide 13. I don't know if that is the objective or not.
That's not good. So can you see slide 8 now?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just work with that.
Okay.
It's and now still slide 8.
Now still slide 8.
Okay, so let's see what happens when we move to slide 9. But yeah, so Pedro, tell us what IFICI is.
So Zef, thank you very much for the introduction. Hello everyone. I'm here to talk basically about the IFICI and how that presents itself to an answer of Portugal to the end of the NHR, and what exactly is the goal of this program, exactly how does it work out in terms of qualification, what is the criteria, what are the benefits. We can start by saying that it's a pretty new scheme. It's something that has been implemented a year ago, but the deep regulation and basically, as I've mentioned earlier, the forms that are available, that has been published the last weeks. So it's something quite new in terms of a practical perspective. But from a theoretical point of view, how that has worked with the legislation. So in terms of conversions with the NHR, the benefits are quite similar. And it offers the 20% flat rate for income associated with employment or self-employment sourced in Portugal, that it is connected to the criteria that we will talk further. And the biggest maybe asset here, it is the benefit of exemption on the foreign sourced income, regardless if it is potentially taxed on the other country or not. That's a major difference for the NHR, especially regarding capital gains derived from securities. Normally, tax treaties do not allow taxation of those streams of income, and it kind of stopped the exemption under the NHR. Well, with IFICI, that will no longer be a problem. The biggest difference as a downside is the fact that pension income is out. So while the NHR granted the 10% flat rate for pension income, IFICI is, as we have been discussing so far, it's more aimed at bringing people to active roles in Portugal and contributing to the local economy. And basically, the pension doesn't quite fit this idea. So at least for now, pension is out of the IFICI. That's the major downside difference for the NHR. And in terms of eligibility, the criteria to get in terms of the qualification, there are major difference compared to the old NHR, NHR 1.0. The qualification in this case, although it retains the same criteria of being a new tax resident in Portugal, you can't be a tax resident the past 5 years. You can't apply if you're not a tax resident in Portugal. Now we have specific criteria relating to certain positions that you need to hold in Portugal. So basically, you can't be simply applying to it because you're a newcomer, but you do not occupy a certain position in anything that concerns the Portuguese economy. And even if you do, it must fit a specific criteria. So as I was saying, this is just a sum up of the benefits that we have discussed before. The conversion, since we don't have an HR anymore, the logical conversion is between a scenario with or without the IFICI TISRI, as we also call it. The differences are basically what you can see in the slide.
Mark, can we see the table?
Yeah, I can see the table.
So yes, we're all seeing it. So the idea is that, as you can see, foreign sourced income generally will be not taxed, with the only exception made being pension. While considering income sourced in Portugal, employment and self-employment, that it is connected with the criteria that fits one of the eligibility requirements for IFICI, will be taxed by a flat rate of 20%, not considering any kind of social security contribution that could be associated with it.
So full exemption on foreign income is the big draw. How does it work?
So in terms of this more specific qualification that I have been talking about, there are multiple paths that you can be followed to reach the qualification criteria. However, each one of them have their own peculiarities. Each one of them are their own small issues, let's say. And we have identified among all of those that you were seeing right now, 2 of them, or potentially 3, are more likely to be accessible for a variety of a certain demographics. So if we're looking into people who want to come to Portugal and work here and have a project here, we're looking more at 2 of those criteria, which it is being a high-skilled professional, which is a concept defined also in the regulation and law, working in an export-driven company, and also roles within certified startups in Portugal. As you can see, the export company route that I have just mentioned is driven for high-skilled professionals, which can be director of companies, and engineering roles, IT, medical professionals, university professors, among other options, which are not quite common, but can be your case. So we always need to compare what you would do in Portugal within one of those companies in this business and the list. You need to have some proven expertise on the area. You need to have at least a bachelor and 3 years of experience, or you don't need the experience, but you need to be a PhD on that specific area. The companies that are eligible as export-driven are the ones with transformative industries, scientific R&D, IP, and communication technologies. And this export-driven is defined as being a company that exports more than 50% of its revenue, being goods or service. You just need to have more than 50% exported outside Portugal. The route through the startup, which has been our favorite so far, simply because it is the most straightforward, at least for now. As you can see, although it can be confusing understanding where you need to go to get the company certified. Once you have a certified startup in front of you, you just need to walk towards the purpose of the company in any innovation that the company is developing, or being a board member of one of those startups. So how do you get there? How do you certify your company as a startup? So you need to reach some eligibility. There is some objective ones that it's basically about the size of the company. Of course, it can be a huge company in order to be a startup, but it also has some subjective criteria, which is defined also in law. It can be, for example, approved as a company in the tech sector by the technological agency in Portugal for innovation, or it can receive an investment from a certified angel or a certified venture capital fund. So imagine a scenario: you have an incorporated company, or you have found out a project that it's interesting enough. Once a venture capital fund makes an investment, or an angel investor makes an investment in that specific company, it is subject to certification as a startup. And the approving entity in this case will be Startup Portugal. It's literally the agency that holds the powers to certify one company that it's recognized as under one of the qualifications. And once you're in, you need to be an employee that works towards, as I mentioned, towards the purpose of this company, or being a board member of the entity itself.
And yeah, for those wondering why are we doing these sort of things with Mark, then there is, I think, a clue, but we will touch more on that later down the line. I think a few words that should be said, perhaps, that we said that our mission is to help people make their move to Portugal a success, and we really mean that. And we've seen a lot of we've been the prime advisor to expats moving under the old NHR scheme, and have had well over 1,000 clients move under that scheme. And it's great in that it supports a lifestyle of having a reasonable or acceptable taxation whilst working remotely, for example. But there's been a big downside to the NHR scheme, which is that it was created to drive the flow of capital into Portugal when Portugal was really struggling for capital well over 10 years ago. And the undesired consequence was that it actually created an incentive not to invest inside Portugal. Because it exempts foreign investments, but taxes local investments. And the outcome is that a lot of expats live in Portugal as sort of a silo. They wake up in the morning, they open their laptop, they work remotely, they keep their friendships outside the country, and then they try to somehow integrate, but without the benefit of some strong work-related or business-related connection. And for Portugal, this is obviously not ideal. It's good to have the capital, but then there is this enormous pool of capital and skill and connections, and a lot of very smart and talented people that could have done a lot to benefit Portugal, but actually they don't even know which companies exist in Portugal. And on the expat side, there's a honeymoon period when you move to a new country, when you enjoy the weather and the food and and the nature and everything. But then it tends to get lonely, and sometimes people just get lonely and leave because there's nothing really connecting them to the country on a deeper level. And there's a lot of focus on obviously on learning Portuguese and trying to integrate, but actually learning the language is one thing, but really playing a positive, useful, important part in the local economy means integrating into the economy. And IFICI fixes that by creating a very strong incentive for people to put their skill into use. And when this scheme started, we thought that it would be seen by people as sort of a necessary evil. You have to do something to participate in the local economy. So you will, but you'll do the absolute minimum necessary. But that's not actually how people approach this at all. We've seen that people are actually excited by the opportunity to find out what Portugal has to offer on the business side. And I think, maybe Mark can validate some of that, but people are actually really happy that they now have this opportunity, and we see this as incredibly positive, both for Portugal but also for the expats community.
Yeah, I agree on that, Zev. Just for a couple of reasons, just to add. So Portugal, in terms of its startup ecosystem, it has been growing. So there's a lot of incentives to grow startups for entrepreneurs, a lot of incubators. So having these professionals that have a lot of experience work, let's say, as advisors in the boards of these startups and help us develop our economy locally, I think it's really beneficial for us as Portuguese as a country. But it's also, as you mentioned, it's the key way for people to help and share their experiences. And there's always a degree of good that it makes you yourself when you develop a startup, or you see a startup grow. It's always good to see that growth, see a workplace grow. So I believe it's a win-win situation for who benefits from the taxes and from the startups and the funds.
We can't. I mean, obviously there's the tax benefit, and our job as tax lawyers is to come up with ways to utilize tax benefits in the best benefit of our clients. But it's super important for us to iterate it. In this particular case, we're entirely behind this, and we think this is super positive. And we're not trying to game the system here by creating some scheme that's utilized to create the tax benefits. We actually think that this can be fantastic for the local startup ecosystem, and everyone in the ecosystem thinks that too. So everyone agrees, and maybe jumping from this. We're introducing Synergy Lisbon, which is not just the name of a project at this point, and hopefully to grow to something much more comprehensive than this. But we chose the word synergy to talk about the best relationship between the Portuguese tech ecosystem and the expats coming together for the greater good. For that purpose, we've joined forces with the local tech industry, and that includes funds such as Mark's fund, and I think Mark's fund, Celtish, has been one of our best partners for this, because they really see and understand the opportunity here. But also with local incubators, and incubators are important because they allow certification of startups as well, and they also have a good flow of quality startups coming through them. The startups themselves, we're now doing a podcast with different startups in Portugal so that they can showcase what we've been working on. Everyone really in the industry that wants to work with us and in the benefit of helping this expat startup ecosystem collaboration takes shape. And the ultimate, fundamentally, the end outcome of this is that we want to try and place expats into compatible startups where they can add as much value as possible and are certified for the purposes of IFICI. For that, they need to add value. There's no one fixed amount. Considering it's a fund, there is an expectation of investment. There's no one fixed amount. There's like a general thoughts on what a typical amount might be. But the expectation is that whoever wants to participate in this would make an investment and will take an active position in a company that they can help and support as it grows. And that puts them under the IFICI umbrella. So yeah, how does it technically look? So we will try and identify the relevant startup for people to get the role within, make sure that it's the founder is happy, the startup's happy, the person has real value to add, all the details are agreed. And then on the basis of that, we will once that all goes ahead, a person will make the investment. From the Fresh Portugal side, for those interested, we will put together a tax plan to fully optimize people's income to be compliant with IFICI and benefit from it as much as possible. And we will also help you vet the companies, make sure they're good and are most suitable to you and are also good opportunities regardless. So this is actually relevant both for people who are coming on the golden visa route and people who are not coming on the golden visa route. For people that are moving to Portugal right now, it makes sense to, I mean, it wouldn't be the same level of investment. For golden visa investors, we will just break out a bit or a part of their investment to allow for the support of the local tech ecosystem, and that can be, I mean, we're not it could be different amounts, but we're roughly thinking about 20 to 30%, something along these lines of the investment, with the rest invested in more vanilla low risk funds. And Mark can elaborate on that a little bit. And with that, if you want to discuss this with us, I mean, I gave the direct link here, but you can just go straight to freshportugal.com, click book services. There's an orientation meeting, it's free, where you can quickly discuss all of this program with us. Please do mention that you came from Nomad Gate, so that it'll be easier for us to know that this has been a good collaboration for us, and we're very happy and honored to be participating in a Nomad Gate webinar. And yeah, I think that's it from us before we move to questions. So I think we can move to you, Mark, and you can tell us more about your funds, and then we can answer questions.
Yeah, thank you, Zev, for the introduction. So basically, adding on what Zev and Pedro just explained, here at Celtics, we're a venture capital firm where we manage investment funds, and within our investment funds, we have the opportunity funds that are eligible for the golden visa, so we can cover the investors that are looking for the golden visa, but also covering the investors that, okay, my first plan is to do the golden visa. I'm not certain if I want to move to Portugal, but we have also the tax option open, where we can offer a board seat. After investing in our fund, we can offer a board seat in one of our qualified startups. So you can also benefit from the new tax scheme if you make the decision to move to Portugal within those 5 years. If you don't want to move to Portugal, that is also a reasonable option. You just want to benefit for the golden visa. Our funds are also eligible for that. So my plan today is to speak a little bit first of our company and our group, what we have been doing in the past couple of years, and then show the investment options that we have. We have very diversified options that target very different risk profiles. So here I'll go briefly through each one. Starting with Celtics and our group. So we've been around for 10 years now. In the past 10 years, we have invested more than 500 million across several funds. And our main source of funding, so our main investor base, are golden visa or have been golden visa investors. So in the past 10 years, we have had more than 500 golden visa investors that then represent more than 1,000 golden visa applications, given that from one investment, you can extend the golden visa to family members. So in a rough estimate of more than 1,000 golden visa applications with an approval rate of 100%. And this is also to showcase that in the last decade, there has been a lot of changes in the law, and we always have been able to adapt to those changes and make sure that the products that we have available, the investment products that we have available, are always compliant with what are the requirements for the golden visa program. And now for this new NHR 2.0, also to benefit from that tax scheme, whoever is looking for that specific benefit. Okay. Although the company itself is only a decade, within our team, we have a much broader experience. So within our team, we have more than 30 years of experience in the venture capital, in investments, and more than that, we are also in the team have experience on managing much larger portfolios. Just a quick going quickly through the team. João and Inês, they're both entrepreneurs and they are co-founders of the company. So started the company after being a couple of years, started their career in China, in Beijing, where they saw the opportunity to start an investment company in Portugal and leverage the network that they created of investors back in China. So make the movement from the Chinese investors into Portugal. And that's where the opportunity came around to set up the group. And then the board members of this regulated entity that is Celtish, led by Miguel, that is our CEO with more than 30 years of experience, 20 years as a venture capitalist. Carlos, that is our CFO and compliance officer, has a very, very close relationship with the regulator. That is always important in these funds. Then João Diaz, that is our fund manager. That is our chief relationship officer. He basically helps investors with the onboarding process and through the time that investors are with us, clearing any doubts, helping also with the change, with the move to Portugal. If you need help with a lawyer, tax advisor, whatever you may need in this investment in Portugal, you have in João and his team someone to help you. And then myself, that I take care basically of everything related with the operations of the fund, and have shared responsibilities with Miguel on the investment strategy, on the investments that we make. So overall, although the company is only a decade long, we have a much broader experience. Now entering the funds and what we have currently under management that are eligible for the golden visa. So again, 3 very different funds with 3 very different risk profiles. So index fund, it's our more conservative fund. It's a fund that we typically say that was tailored for the golden visa investor, where we bring a lot of that knowledge of the last 10 years. What are the concerns of the golden visa investor? And typically their main interest is the program and obtaining the Portuguese citizenship and European passport. So their concerns are around preserving capital and have some flexibility when it comes to exit options. So having those 2 in mind, we have set up this fund that is highly exposed to low risk and low volatile assets. Okay, it's a 50 million fund with an expected return of 6% per year. Then we have Container, that is our venture capital fund. And here in Container, we'll be investing in startups where our unique value proposition is we have paired up with an AI academy. And this is an AI academy based in Madeira that train every year 20 to 30 new professionals. And what is our investment strategy here is to each startup that we invest in, we'll be adding AI capabilities to those investments through our AI academy. Okay, with the main goal of making the startups more efficiently from an operational point of view, growing into new geographies, and to increase at a faster rate, so we can have a successful exit after 6-7 years after investing. Okay, so here, of course, it's more venture capital risk. It's also where we have the board seats for the investors interested in the new tax scheme that Zeb and Pedro kindly kindly explained in detail. So this is where typically investors that look for that scheme invest in. Then we have Orange, most recent fund that we launched, that is a fund that is exposed more to crypto assets. So again, targeting investors that are comfortable with crypto assets, believe in the value of crypto assets in the next couple of years. So it's targeting investors that are more comfortable with that kind of risk. What is here the main benefit? Okay, so the Golden Visa is a 500K investment. So you can diversify that 500K investment according with your risk profile. So imagine that this is the typical situation that we get is investors that they want the Golden Visa, okay? They want low risk, but they want to have their options open because they believe that in 2 or 3 years they may want to move to Portugal. So that typical investors that we are getting a lot invest 400K in index, 100K in container. Okay, some are more like more the risk. Having said that, they're going to have an active role in the startups. They believe that they can contribute and they want to have more exposure to the results of the VC fund. So they invest more in container and less on index. And then there's also the opportunity for investors that they don't want the Golden Visa, so they just want to benefit from the NHR 2.0, where they invest 100K on container to benefit from that tax scheme. So again, our view as a fund manager is to have 3 very different options and let each individual distribute their 500K in a way that makes more sense to them, where they can benefit the most out of the final outcome. Okay. One thing important to add, in each one of our funds, we have invested 1 million. Okay. So we not only are fund managers, but we are also investors in each fund that we manage. And I think that that's a key point here, that we're here also sharing all the risks and all the success with our investors. Now I'll detail index and container for you. So index, as I mentioned, has a high exposure to the financial markets and to financial instruments, where again, the main goal is preserving capital. So we're looking at investments that hold on to value very well, and that have very low volatility. So which asset class are we very much exposed to? Bonds. Okay, so we have a high exposure to bonds, specifically government bonds, because they offer that capability to preserve capital in the long run, and during the 5 or 6 years, that is the time that you need to complete the Golden Visa program. More than bonds, we also invest in gold. Again, gold has the capability to hold on value in the long term. It works as a very good instrument against inflation, and also has a tendency to appreciate in value, or there's expectation that it will continue to appreciate in value in the next couple of years. More than that, then we have 10% in stocks and 5% in deposits, and even in the stock level, we're talking about indexes and ETFs. So we're not cherry picking stocks. We're investing in ETFs where the risk is very, very well diversified. 60% of this investment is made in Portugal, and that's relevant in order for the fund to be eligible for the Golden Visa. And again, here the main goal isn't targeting the profits; it's preserving capital. More, and within the same mindset. More than these financial investments, we also invest in alternative investments that basically are companies where their value is driven by the assets that the company holds. Okay, couple of examples. EN6 Ventures, a company that invests in classic vehicles, in collectibles. Again, assets that have a tendency to hold on to value very well in the long term. There are specific models that have the capability to appreciate in value, but if some don't appreciate the value, others hold on to value very well. So it's aligned with the strategy of the fund. Another example of investments made, Acoustic. Acoustic is a company that they produce phone booths. Okay, and they rent. They don't only sell these phone booths to office spaces, but they also rent them. Our agreement here, in order to fund the operations of the company, we buy those contracts. So we basically, the contracts that Acoustic are signing with companies, we buy those contracts and we benefit from the monthly rent of them. So we're not exposed to production risk, we're not exposed to commercial risk. That is all in Acoustic. What do we get? We're benefiting from the contracts and the rents that these phone booths generate. Okay, so again, companies that where their main value driver are the assets that they hold. Again, to be completely in line with the strategy of the whole fund, that is preserving capital. In terms of timeline of the fund, so during the first 6 years, we'll be investing and reinvesting the fund. After year 6, we enter the divestment period, and it's where we'll be liquidating our investments and paying back our investors. Okay, so after year 6, again, given the liquidity of the bonds, the gold, the stocks, we'll be able to pay back investors right after the investment period. And if for any reason you need to exit before year 6, there are also options where you can exit the fund. Okay. In terms of fees, just going quickly on the fees, it's a 2% fee on management. Again, that is a cost of the fund. So other than the investment, we won't require any extra expenses from investors to cover these costs. And in terms of profit sharing, the first 6%, so we have a hurdle rate of 6%, meaning that the first 6% goes on to investors. Okay, that's the first 6% of profit every year. The following 2% to the fund managers, and all profits above 8%, we collect 25% of those profits, and the fund manager keeps 75% of those profits above 8% per year. So in other terms, from an investor point of view, they will collect the first 6% per year and 75% of the profits above 8%. Okay, again, trying to be always align the interest of investors with the fund being the investors, the first being paid when it comes to profits. So here, index, again, a more conservative option. Going into container. So the unique value proposition of container is, as I mentioned before, your typical standard VC firm that will give support, financial support, help startups and founders with their operations, with their go-to-market strategies, funding their activities. So the typical assistance and help that you get from a VC firm will happen here in container. What is the extra that we have is, given that our business partner on AI Academy, each investment that we make, each startup will have access to an AI framework, an operating model, an AI strategy, and access to an interim chief data and AI officer. Okay, so this is our unique value proposition. What are the companies that we'll be looking at? What are the startups that we are investing in? Startups that we won't focus on any specific industry. As you can all imagine, Portugal being a small country, we can't really focus on a specific industry. So what the main characteristics will be companies that are export oriented, their service or the product is export oriented, or the business is scalable. Okay, those are the two main characteristics that we'll be looking at, other than the usual, the quality of the founders team, and the experience of the founder, and so on. Of course, that is also important, but looking at the market in which those startups work on is of high importance for the fund. Also, we're looking at companies that have existing revenue or client base. Okay, so in some cases, their product or service that they are selling has been proven in the market, and of course, based in Portugal, or at least 60% of the startups that we'll be investing in will be based in Portugal to meet the criteria of the golden visa. Okay, so here is basically where we will have available all the startup, all the board seats. Okay, for the investors that are wanting to benefit from the new Portuguese tax regime, the NHR 2.0. And this is where we see that they can really add value. So we're giving the experience that they can bring to the table and help our startups develop and help our fund also develop and gain with the results of that participation in each startup. So a little bit more of how Container and the fund will work. So Celtic will be the VC firm responsible for the investment, for the operation, and for maintaining these investments and exiting these investments. Data Mentors is the AI Academy based in Madeira, and then there will be an advisory board that will be overseeing our activities, mostly made of tech and AI experts that will help in the first stage when we identify a good startup to invest in. They will see, okay, let me analyze and see if this startup will benefit from our academy and will benefit from the implementation of AI. And then secondly, overseeing the work being executed by Data Mentors. So the academy based in Madeira has the support of the local government. Okay, so the local government, they see Data Mentors as key to bring new talent to the region, and not only that, having new businesses being set up and develop their activities in Madeira. So their headquarters were offered by the local government, and then the advisory board, again, those tech and AI experts led by Iliana Marques, that is the CEO and founder of Data Mentors, together with Errol, David, and Liam, will give support, consulting support throughout the activity of the fund. In terms of timeline, again, 10-year fund, will be investing during 6 years, and then during 4 years, we'll be divesting and exiting the investments made. In terms of profit sharing, very similar scheme to what we have in Index, but with higher rates. So the first 8% goes to investors, following 2% to the fund manager, and all profits above 10% are split 75% to investors, 25% to the fund manager. Okay, so summing things up, 2 very different options, 2 very different risk profiles that will give also back to the investors the capability to choose their risk balance if they want more conservative or more VC risk, and not only that, benefit from a board seat that then they can benefit for all the very interesting tax regime that has been now implemented in Portugal. So I think here we can cover both spectrums and both types of investors. So that's it for me on the fund level. Again, contacts. You can contact us through Zev or through Fresh, or you can contact us directly through our website. I'll share with you in the chat our direct contacts. So if any questions that you may have, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to have one-to-one calls and explain things in further detail if needed, or go back to any topic that wasn't 100% clear.
So I don't know if you see my screen again. Hopefully
yes, I do. I do.
Great. So yeah, there's been some questions that have been given to us before this the webinar. We'll try and run. I think we're about 10 minutes to close an hour. I think we'll try and run and maybe answer as much as we can within like an hour, maybe an hour and 5 minutes. And if we haven't covered anyone's questions, please do reach out to us. But yeah, we can just run through as many as we can. The ones I copied pasted are mostly tax and immigration related. But if something is relevant to your space, Mark, please jump in.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, it's almost all the questions that have been posted to us. Not quite all of them, but almost all. So the first one is, I'm a 2021 applicant for visa, haven't yet received the residency card. Will it be possible to apply for NHR if I receive my NHR 2.0 in that case, if I receive my residency in 2025, Pedro?
Yeah, probably the person mentioning IFICI TISRI as being NHR. The old NHR is not an option anymore, but with TISRI, it doesn't really matter when you started your process or if you have your residency card or not. Once you come to Portugal effectively and you become a tax resident in Portugal, which means legally, if you stay more than 183 days in the country or you have your primary residency here, from a bureaucratical point of view, if you have a tax identification number, your NIF, and you have a Portuguese address associated with it, you are deemed as tax resident in Portugal. You can apply to the IFICI if you meet the criteria. Take into consideration that by being a tax resident of Portugal, you owe taxes to Portugal in the first moment. Let's see how much it will be with IFICI, with TISRI, for example, but bear in mind that you will need to report income to Portugal from the moment that you start your tax residency. I will just catch up because the second question is kind of the same. It's an application filled up in March 2023. If there is a way to apply for NHR 2.0, IFICI, TISRI, it's the same logic behind it. Yeah, once you become a Portuguese tax resident, then you can apply to IFICI in the very same year that this tax residency started.
Actually, I want to add something that I think we missed at an earlier point, or maybe haven't given it enough emphasis. Unlike the previous NHR regime, IFICI grants a full exemption on capital gains from securities. In the past, it was only for Americans because in the NHR, you needed to show a taxation right to the other country, and it's only the US that taxes its citizens. But normally, most people would move to Portugal only Portugal will have the right to tax them, and therefore NHR didn't apply. With IFICI, the capital gains from a foreign source is fully covered. And if you live in Portugal and you have capital gains in another country, almost always under the treaty, then there is no tax in the other country as well. So if, for example, if you're a UK-based entrepreneur and you sell your UK company, now today you'll pay a 24% capital gains tax. It used to be 10, and now it's 24. But if you move to Portugal just before you exit, or in good time before you exit, such that it wouldn't look completely orchestrated, and you sell your UK company under IFICI, you will not pay anything in the UK, and you will not pay anything in Portugal. So for people who are tech founders, and I think these are some of the people that this scheme tries to attract, setting up a subsidiary and qualifying under IFICI is a new opportunity that hadn't existed before and is super attractive. So yeah, just wanted to make sure we've said that, because I think I've seen at least one question of someone running a tech company.
And also on the tax perspective on the funds. So a Portuguese resident only pays 10% on capital gains from the funds. A non-Portuguese tax resident pays no capital gain, so it has full tax exemption on all gains from our funds, and this from our funds or any other venture capital or private equity fund.
Yeah, that's very important as well. Yeah, thanks for stressing that as well, Mike. We're actually advising people in general to structure their investments through a Portuguese fund if they can, and we even have clients using Portuguese funds that don't even live in Portugal, because it's such a good vehicle for investments. Yeah, Golden Visa versus NHR implications for US citizens who are also retirees. So I think, Pedro, we covered that retirees are the main losers of these changes, and
yeah, but perhaps the person mentioned Golden Visa versus NHR, just make sure that the IFICI and Golden Visa, they complement each other potentially. They are not opposite directions. TISRI, IFICI, NHR 2.0 is a tax benefit structure, while Golden Visa is simply an immigration route that can be developed to reach Portugal. In this case, they can communicate. But in this case, what we're looking is with the old NHR, we had benefits derived for pensioners. So in this case, retirees from the US, for example, would enjoy the 10% flat rate. Now First of all, it will be harder if you are a retiree to fit under IFICI, although the golden visa option is always there for you, but meeting the criteria for IFICI will be harder because you need an active role in Portugal, and your pensions will not be covered by any benefits derived from IFICI itself.
I think when people say golden visa versus NHS, maybe they mean, you know, should I move or should I use the golden visa for occasional visits and stay under the threshold? But yeah, it's not entirely clear.
Again, the golden visa gets you the passport, okay, and the NHR will never get you the passport. I think that's also a big difference. And I see a lot of questions around. So the golden visa, if you're looking for the golden visa, it's a 500K investment. That's the minimum. If you're looking only for the new IFICI, I haven't still got the name right, but IFICI, then the minimum is 100K. Of course, if you like the fund, you want to invest more, you can always invest more, but the minimum is 100K. Okay. Now, if you do the full 500K, you could benefit from the both. But imagine you don't want the golden visa, you're not interested in obtaining the Portuguese citizenship. You just want to move to Portugal for a couple of years and have the tax benefit, then the minimum will be 100K. Just to be very clear on the difference of the two when it comes to investing amounts.
Well, I mean, your minimum mark, right? I mean, the investment is the vehicle to get a board seat.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think yeah, I mean, there has to be a sensible contribution to a startup for the startup to be happy to offer a board seat, or for the fund to be happy to offer a board seat. I do suspect that if an ex-VP of Google shows up in Portugal and offers free services to one of the startups, perhaps they can get a board seat without any investment at all, and that's fine. But we're trying to create a streamlined process and be practical as well. Yeah, so after you become a citizen of Portugal, do you have to pay taxes if you move to another country?
In this case, no, Portugal doesn't have the citizenship taxation method that exists in the US, for example. So becoming a Portuguese citizen doesn't change anything. What changes is tax residency. So if you move to another country, if you become a tax resident in another jurisdiction, you are only taxed in Portugal for any Portuguese sourced income, which means if you have a property here, and this property generates income, or for any reason, if you visit and work from Portugal, even if you're a tax resident no more, that's nothing that will change drastically what happens with someone who's not a citizen of Portugal.
Yeah, so I think Mark covered the last question on this slide, which is, you know, D7 visa, passive income visa, how do you benefit from IFICI? So still board seat, no need to make a golden visa type investment, and that still works. Yeah, so unfortunately, we have a glorious immigration department at Fresh, but unfortunately, the head of the immigration department couldn't join us today, and therefore it falls upon me to represent her with my limited immigration knowledge, but I have asked her before, so I do know the answers to all of these questions. The first one's the hardest. Has the IMA portal been fixed? There's been some problem paying immigration fees. In honesty, I had absolutely no idea whether there was any problem with the IMA portal, but now I know that there is still a problem. But the IMA is saying that any day now it should be fixed. So
and it has been just a little bit of feedback on that part. So on our clients that have invested, so at the beginning of the year, they have been called. So one of the process after you submit the process and make the investment, you are called for an appointment here in Portugal. It's the first time that you need to come to Portugal. It's when they make that appointment, so you can take your biometrics and start the process. And we have a couple of investors that in the last 2 months have started to receive that call and that appointment. So that for me is a sign that the backlog is being worked. There's still a long way to go. Need to be completely transparent on that, but it seems like things are happening.
Yeah, same experience here. We see some positive movement. Right. So how long does it take to gain citizenship? I think we answered that. After 5 years, you can apply. After 7 years, you'll normally get it. Does the golden visa allow to travel anywhere in Europe? Yes, it allows you to travel anywhere in Europe, but not to become a resident. So you need to get your passport first, and then you can also become a resident.
In
And
Europe,
that's-
and not only in Europe, but in more than 180 countries, visa free. So Portugal,
Yeah.
I think it's ranked like third or fourth strongest passport in terms of
amazing
agreements.
passport. Yeah.
So more than Europe, you have much more countries where you can benefit from the visa
Actually,
free.
I've been told today that the equivalent program in the US has been discontinued. Apparently, Trump's been raving about this new 5 million program where you can get a US passport for paying 5 million. But in fact, the existing program allows you to get a US passport if you invest 800,000. And that's been discontinued. So people looking at the US will now need to look elsewhere. And here's a yet more attractive option that also comes with tax benefits. And who wants to go to the US anyway? Yeah. More questions on tax. How best does one negotiate a board position on a startup during the golden visa process? Hopefully, that's what we all talked about here. I don't like the word negotiate, though an investment and board seats are close friends. It's normal for people to invest in startup companies and have a board seat. Usually it's only reserved for very big investors. In this case, there's an interesting situation, an interesting incentive. But yeah, talk to us. I mean, the whole point is that we're trying to make this win-win for everyone. So if you think you can add value to a company, we want to know who you are, your background, what you've done before, and also how else can you be helpful, and we'll try and help you.
We'll find a way.
We'll find a way. So yeah, I think that the second question here is actually quite how do you qualify for a particular status in a particular industry? So yeah, talk to us. I mean, we do this every day. This is what we do. We get the codes right. We follow the forms. This is what lawyers exist for. So
yeah, just worth mentioning that it's been asked, does it need to be set up in Portugal? Can it be established in another country? You need to have the company established in Portugal.
In Portugal, yeah.
Okay, so the startup business or any business, the companies or anything that qualifies for IFICI specifically will need to be developed and incorporated from the Portuguese perspective, and all the certification must be done from the Portuguese perspective.
Pedro, I challenge you to answer the last question as shortly as possible. It's a question on tax residency.
Basically it kind of revolves to the first question. What really matters for GV card holder is if you're a tax resident or not. If you stay less than 183 days, you never communicate the tax authorities of having a tax residency here. You
don't buy tax.
And you don't have your primary residency here in Portugal. You are not required for any kind of tax return filing, and especially not on worldwide income. Bear in mind that if you stay less than 183 days, but you come to Portugal, you have a primary housing here, you communicate to the tax authorities, especially this last requirement, you communicate to tax authorities that your official address is in Portugal. It doesn't matter if you stay less than 183 days. Okay, you will need to file a tax return. But if you're a GV card holder, being a tax resident, it's actually an option. So it's something that you can control.
And just to add there, Pedro, on the number of days to stay in Portugal, the Golden Visa program, for people just looking for the Golden Visa, in order to renew your residency card, the Golden Visa card, you just need to be in Portugal 14 days every 2 years. Okay, so it's really a minimum stay, and it just keeps options a little bit open for investors in terms of immigrating and choosing where they want to reallocate.
Makes sense.
So are there funds where I can invest my $500,000 to qualify me for the NHR, or simply by investing, or must you secure a board seat? So investing doesn't give you anything. Investment gives you leverage, and makes you friendly, and makes the fund want to work with you. It's the board seat that gives you the tax benefits. But normally people don't just walk into startup companies and say, hey, give me a board seat. You need to do something useful. And that can be an investment, or it can be adding value in a different way, or you can find an employment position in a startup. Either one of these things work. You know, we try to create something that we feel is right for everyone, but there's more than one route. But yeah, it's not the investment, it's the board seat that creates the qualification. Well, next one. If I qualify for NHR 2.0 by investing in qualified funds, see my answer on before. When does my 10-year tax break clock start? So it's from when you become a tax resident, right?
Exactly.
That's the count. But vacation home doesn't generate tax residency. A permanent home does. Make sure though that if you buy a house, and the agent asks you if you want to pay the tax for a permanent home, or the tax for a secondary home, which is just slightly higher, pay the tax for the secondary home. Otherwise, you could very certainly be caught on, by the radar of the tax authorities, and they could deem you a tax resident, and it does happen a lot. So yeah, that's on the questions that we've had before. Let's see. So yeah, I mean, we have 75% of the people are still here. I think that means we should probably try and answer a few more questions that were posted online, and see when people get tired. Fair enough. It's been an hour and 10 minutes, but it seems still interesting.
I have one interesting one that comes up a lot from Stuart, that a 77-year-old that is joining the Golden Visa with his son, and wanted to clarify if the language requirement will apply to me. So yes, when you the language requirement happens when you request a Portuguese passport. Okay, so when you request a Portuguese citizenship, you need to pass a Portuguese test. However, it's an A2 test, very, very simple test. There are also courses available that give you the equivalency to the Portuguese certificate and language test. So I know people sometimes are kind of frightened of learning a new language, and it may be difficult. In this case, it's very, very simple. I believe Zev has the experience of learning Portuguese, so probably he can answer that it's not that big, or not that big of a deal.
Well, I'm not 77 years old. Fair enough. It does get tougher with time, but I think it's important to remember that people can continue to renew their golden visa forever. So you don't have to apply for citizenship. You can just keep going. It just means you pay more fees, but you can keep the status. You don't, yeah. So let's see what else is interesting. So yes, there will be a replay where the incubators and tech hubs primarily located. Lisbon, yeah. I mean, there's quite a few in Lisbon. There's a lot in Porto. They're all over the country, and there are very good ones all over the country. So definitely Lisbon is the biggest one, but Porto is not far behind. It's quite a big hub as well. Some would argue that it's better.
Yeah,
I beg to differ. Mark and I may not necessarily agree on this, but
typically the north of the country has a more entrepreneurial spirit. It has been like that for forever. So in the last 50, 60 years, the whole industry of Portugal is set in the north of the country. That's why it has a more entrepreneurial mindset. So a lot of interesting projects and startups are being created in Porto, Braga, up in the north. But yeah, we have incubators and accelerators across the whole country, even in the Algarve. That also some very interesting projects are coming out of the Algarve. So yeah, all across the country.
There's a super interesting. So John Hamlin is asking a super interesting question that actually reminds me of something else I wanted to bring up. So yeah, John's the founder of an early stage data and AI company, works with private equity firms in the US. and wonder whether the firm would benefit from creating a foothold in Portugal as a future play. And I think we kind of covered that. So yeah, absolutely, you will benefit if you will want to move and become a tax resident. Everything will be ready for you, also to qualify for IFICI. But there is one more reason to do that, which we haven't mentioned before, but it's probably a good time to bring it up now. I don't know how many people are aware of this, but there's a concept called CFID funds in Portugal, which is more late stage R&D driven type funds that were created by another tax benefit. And Mark wants to add to that as well.
No, sorry.
Oh, okay. There is, I think last I heard, about 2.5 billion euros waiting to be invested. And these funds are looking for good opportunities, and subsidiaries of successful companies overseas are seen as good opportunities. It's unlikely to be a very early stage. So these funds, they invest late stage. But if you're planning to scale and grow a company and you need access to capital at a later stage, Portugal is actually very good with that. So another reason to open a subsidiary. Let's get one more.
Yep.
Sorry, Mark, you want to pick the last one?
The last one on the 10-year limit to the golden visa.
No, I don't mean literally the last one. Do you want to just pick one more?
No, can we? So the funds, the funds are typically 10 years. The golden visa, as Zev was mentioning, there isn't a limit, so you can renew it every 2 years. The issue is when you renew the golden visa, you need to prove that you have an investment within a fund. That's why typically people believe that it's limited for 10 years, but it can be renewed every 2 years.
So I'll take just one more, and I think we'll close at that because I think it's an important question. Someone asked, do you need a particular expertise to qualify for a board seat if you're making a 100K investment? And so if all you've done in your life is gardening, this is going to be tough. We want people to genuinely be helpful and productive board members and support local companies. We certainly don't want people who are trouble. And so, we're not going to force on startups people that are completely incompatible. So you don't need a particular experience. And I think I've been in boards as a board member and also as a founder and also as an investor for many years now. There are very skilled people with great experience being in board who are absolute pain and they can destroy companies. And there are people with sometimes with little relevant experience, but with a lot of empathy and some connections, or a lot of time to allow people to reflect. And so there are different types of board members. So we're definitely looking for the sort of people that really buy into the idea of helping and supporting a local startup and have some relevant expertise or network to do that. And then the capital comes as the cherry on top. And that's how we look at it. And
that's important, Zev, to mention, because at the end of the day, the VC funds and the funds that we manage, it's a financial business, but it's also a people business. So the people that we bring to the table, that we present to our startups, will also play a key role. So it's not only expertise; it's a little bit more than that. And if we can really work together.
I think we're close at that, and thank very much. And apologies for not answering each and every individual question, but that would take another couple of hours. But yeah, do reach out to us if you have an important question that has been left unanswered. And thank you for the 26 people that were patient enough to stay with us for almost an hour and a half at a late and rainy day. Or at least late and rainy in Lisbon for us. So thank you very much. And we hope that you found that interesting and useful. And we would love to work with you in the future. So thank you very much. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Mark. And thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all right.